In a quiet, snow-dusted Amish village in Pennsylvania, nestled among the rolling hills and thick woods, winter was a force to be reckoned with. Long before the first snowflake fell, the village was alive with preparation. For the Yoder family, winter meant something unique. In a world without electric heaters or thermostats, staying warm was a skill honed over generations, passed down as part of their daily life and tradition. Young Samuel Yoder, who had just turned 12, stood in awe as his father, Eli, and the older men of the village began their annual winter preparations. Samuel was growing older now, and his father had decided it was time he learned the ways of keeping their home warm. It wasn't as simple as lighting a match or flipping a switch. For the Amish, keeping warm required both strength and knowledge, as well as a respect for nature. Samuel, his father called one morning, just as the first frost glittered on the fields. "Today, you'll come with me to the woods." They harnessed the horses, hitched the cart, and rode out in the brisk morning air, heading for the family's woodlot. The trees were tall and sturdy, with years of history in their bark. Eli pointed to a cluster of oak and maple trees. "These here," he said, patting the rough bark of a mighty oak, "will give us firewood that burns long and warm." Samuel watched as his father expertly marked certain trees, explaining that they were careful not to over-harvest, letting the forest renew itself. The cutting process was precise, each tree was felled with care, avoiding waste, and each branch was saved, split, and stacked. For days, Samuel worked alongside his father, feeling the sting of cold on his face and the ache in his arms, learning how the Amish respected the earth, only taking what was needed to get through the winter. Back at the Yoder home, the woodpile grew higher each day. Samuel's mother, Mary, also had her own winter rituals. She would take thick wool blankets, each one hand-woven, and fold them neatly at the foot of each bed. She was also a master quilt maker, and each autumn, she added 1 or 2 new quilts to their collection, sewing the pieces by lamplight. Samuel loved the designs, each square of fabric telling a story, each stitch filled with care and love. On colder days, the whole family would sit around the cast-iron stove in the center of their home. It was more than just a source of warmth. It was where Mary cooked their meals and where the children gathered to listen to their grandparents' stories. The stove crackled to life every morning, fed by wood Samuel and Eli had stacked. It was like a heartbeat in the home, warm and steady, giving life to the house even in the dead of winter. One evening, Samuel's grandmother, Esther, joined them by the stove and started talking about the old days. She told Samuel stories of her own childhood, when winters seemed even harsher, and how her family would gather close to their own stove, making soup and telling stories to pass the long, cold nights. As she spoke, Samuel noticed the way the firelight danced in her eyes, full of warmth and memories. Esther leaned in close to Samuel and whispered, "Did you know that every stove in this village has a story?" Samuel looked around. To him, the stove was just a piece of iron and metal, but he listened as his grandmother told him about the many stoves in the community, each one brought over from faraway places, passed down for generations. There was also the large coal stove in the family's main house, where extended relatives gathered every Sunday. Unlike the wood stove, the coal stove was designed to burn for hours, sometimes even overnight, without needing to be refilled. Coal was harder to come by, so the stove was only used for special occasions, but it was cherished as a place for the whole family to stay warm together. As the first heavy snow began to fall, Samuel noticed the ways his mother and grandmother prepared the home. They stuffed straw between the window frames and doors, creating a natural insulation to keep drafts out. This was an old trick, passed down from mothers to daughters. They also placed thick rugs over the floors, adding warmth underfoot. In the evenings, the family would often gather to make candles from beeswax. The soft glow from these candles filled the home with a gentle, comforting light, casting warm shadows across the walls. Samuel learned that every candle was precious. They burned slowly and provided light without the hum or flicker of electric bulbs. One especially cold night, Samuel's father gathered the children close and showed them how to lay the fire properly. "Each log has a purpose," he explained, placing larger logs at the base and stacking smaller pieces on top, like building blocks. The big logs burned steady, but the small ones helped to get it started. Samuel felt a sense of pride and purpose as he learned this craft, understanding that something as simple as starting a fire held its own kind of wisdom. As winter deepened, Samuel grew accustomed to the rhythm of keeping the fire alive. He woke before dawn to help his father, wrapping himself in his wool coat and boots, trudging outside to gather fresh wood. He learned the subtle signs that told him when the fire needed tending, like the color of the embers or the scent of the smoke. One evening, as he sat by the fire, Samuel's mother brought him a cup of hot cider, freshly made. She ruffled his hair and told him how proud she was of his hard work. Samuel smiled, feeling a new warmth inside himself, one that came not just from the fire, but from a sense of accomplishment and belonging. The Yoder's house, though simple, became a fortress against the cold. The heavy wool blankets, the crackling fire, and the soft glow of beeswax candles all came together to make the home feel like a haven. Samuel understood now that warmth wasn't just about firewood or blankets. It was about the love and care they put into preparing, year after year. In a world without electricity, Samuel found that warmth came not from machines, but from the work of his own hands, the strength of his family, and the love they shared. As he lay in bed under layers of quilts, listening to the soft crackle of the fire and the gentle snores of his family, Samuel felt something that went beyond warmth, a connection to the land, to his family, and to the traditions that kept them together through the coldest nights.